was found myself in a legal situation revolving around my family. And it was such the point there that my freedom was being threatened to be taken away from me. And it was shocking to me because, this wasn't, I felt like this wasn't anything that I did, but yet this huge burden and threat was in me, was in my face. And so what I saw was that it was originating in my family system several generations back, where there was this pattern of somebody getting into legal troubles, it was a victim perpetrator energy, and I was seeing it generation after generation. Yeah.
Megan, thank you so much for joining us. I am very excited to hear your story because you do family constellations and you work with a morphogenic field. So before we get into all of that, how did you get into it?
Oh, yes. That's a big question. Thanks for having me on the program. First off, I appreciate you holding space for me to share my story here and also share this work with others. As a child, I was able to see and feel everything in my family system, and that meant that I was carrying a lot for my family, a lot of pain. I took on a lot of I will carry this for you, and as I grew into a teenager, into my 20s, I really hadn't developed many tools to deal with the pain, the trauma that I was carrying for my family, and also that I was experiencing as a person. So here I was seeing the dynamic, the pain, the struggles, the issues within the family, but not knowing what to do with that. And carrying from my family, and then also experiencing my own trauma, not being able to transform it. I as a kid, I also knew that there was something else. I also knew that there were solutions. I also knew that this couldn't be it. So I didn't have the language, kind of like how I'm speaking right now. It's sort of like I don't know, I don't have the language for it. That's where I was growing up. So in my 20s, I started seeking transformational work. And I did a couple programs where a couple light bulbs went off, and I was like, okay, there's hope. I did therapy, I self-help tools, and then, but I was really very much living my life. I got married in my late 20s, and the pattern showed up in a new way. So the relationship issues, the personal struggles, and I started really, really seeing how I was connected to my grandma. I was connected to my great grandmother, and seeing those patterns show up in my marriage in a new way. So I started seeing a marriage counselor who just so happened to introduce family constellation work to me. And I went to one of her workshops, but what she did every session that I had with her, she was teaching me how to work with the field myself. So we would write on pieces of paper, and working with the field meant I was beginning to understand what I was seeing and what I was feeling all my entire life, seeing the underlying dynamics of relationships, of life, tuning into some sort of different energy field. And so I was really working with her one-on-one, not knowing that I was being trained to facilitate, just kind of giving tools to navigate through all this. when I went to her workshop, it was the first time I went to a family constellation workshop. It was a distinct before and after, because I saw I saw in reality how what I intuitively knew, or the information that I was tuning into, could then be applied for healing. So she showed me the missing piece of this is, there's this trauma, there's this seeing, knowing of the interconnectedness, interrelatedness to us all, and the field that we connect to that supports us seeing all the interrelatedness. And now here's what we can do to it so that we can support healing and moving through this pain, trauma, and shift, like literally profoundly shift it through transformation into something completely new. So constellation work came into my life that way. So that was the beginning part of like the introduction to it. And there are more layers to this. I think the really pivotal part of my life, I found myself in a legal situation revolving around my family. And it was such the point there that my freedom was being threatened to be taken away from me. And it was shocking to me because, I felt like this wasn't anything that I did, but yet this huge burden and threat was in me, was in my face. And so what I saw was that it was originating in my family system several generations back, where there was this pattern of somebody getting into legal troubles, it was a victim perpetrator energy, and I was seeing it generation after generation. And here I was surprised because I'm innocent, but how am I entangled with this? And so that's when I began to get into family constellations even deeper, because this was actually threatening my life, threatening my freedom. And so it was like the universe was forcing me to dive into this work deeper, because to me, I got to get rid of that. I can't have that burden. Otherwise, that's my life. I had unconscious loyalties to the family. There was this belief around keeping the peace in the family. There was this belief around I have to sacrifice myself for the good of the family. And that ended up really taking from me, such that I ended up in this situation where I had given myself to the family, and again, threatening my freedom. So there are a lot of things that led to the path of family constellation work. And then I did not know I was going to become a facilitator until I started really doing all the work for myself, the family constellations, the internal parts work as well, and slowly sort of developed into becoming a facilitator, and took a program to certify. And then one day it was like, oh, I am actually in this role of facilitator, and I've been on this journey for the last 15 years. So that's a big high level view of how I became, how I was called to the work, and again, a high level view of the the journey to discovering this is a tool for profound healing and transformation.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you for sharing. I just want to ask you a few questions about that. So firstly, as a child, did you know you were carrying the burden, or was it just a feeling you had, or were you aware that you were doing it, or did you become aware later on when you were older?
It was like it was my job. It was like and I know as facilitators, these words come to us now to support our clients. I will carry this for you. I will carry this because I will feel this because you can't. I will do this for you. As a child, I was doing that. Was I aware of it? I think there's this small child who wants to help. That's in my nature, right? And as a small child, it was like, okay, dad's sad or mom's stressed. Let me feel that for her. Let me take that on. And so we're in a set, we know that we're doing it, but in a small child's mind, we don't know what the repercussions are, right? And that's our world. Like as a small child, it's my nature to help others, and I can do this. Boy, can I feel. So
Yeah.
I will do that. So it's sort of like when we look and stand in her shoes, I can't wrong her for that. She was doing her job. She was doing what she's good at. She was doing her nature. It's just that, when you go forward in time, you go, that's not my job anymore. That I help others in a way that is healthy now. But when we're unconsciously still feeling that role, still entangled, still giving ourselves in that way, when there's no boundaries, if we haven't established our boundaries as a person, and we're still a child who, again, doesn't, it's all melted, it doesn't, we don't really have the sense of self yet, then it's not serving us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said your first constellation, you had a huge shift. What was the shift that happened then?
I think the biggest shift, and I remember doing a constellation around my husband. He was in the military, and he had seen a, a painful amount of, I mean, any amount of death is painful. An absurd amount of death in the war in Iraq, and when and he wasn't talking about it. And so I remember I did a constellation around him, and I remembered, and it still sticks with me. I'm as a I was not representing. It was, the representatives were representing, and I remembered the woman, and I don't remember exactly who she was representing. She could have been representing him, but I remember her saying, the smell, and I remembered that moment, like smelling, like from one step removed, the smell of death, and that had such an impact on me. And it was like it collapsed the ages. It brought back, like, pinpoints of time of the significance of war and the impact, the burden, the humanity, what war causes, what war leaves with the person that experiences it and everyone else, and how that spreads. And that smell, that representative experience in that moment really sticks with me. And I think that really was her being able to access that in the constellation, and me being able to connect to so many through the field, so many access points to empathy, to remembering, to knowledge, to the greater, was a shift. I don't think I'd ever really experienced anything like that. And so that constellation that day, and especially, and again, I'd been doing work one-on-one with my therapist during sessions, but having it be in the community setting and I think we had maybe 5 people there that day, 5 or 6 people. But I'd represented myself, but I'd never experienced others tuning into somebody else who existed, someone else who was deceased, being able to stand in great grandfather's shoes and access and presence their essence, their being, their words, what they saw. And so to me, that was like, okay, this isn't a normal paradigm that I know. What is this? Because this feels like a calling to me in some way.
So So just for the viewers who don't know what family constellations is, just give us a brief outline of how it works so that they can kind of understand when you say people are representing for you. And
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of going through the conversation a
yeah.
little bit backwards. It's okay. Um, so family constellations is, and you know, you can describe family constellations infinite way. When we're talking about a workshop, we let's say I have my as a facilitator, I'll speak from the perspective of facilitator. I'll have my client next to me, and let's say that the client has an issue that's coming up in her marriage, and so she's describing the issue. I will ask, you know, what's heavy on your heart, and what we'll begin to hear, what I'll begin to hear in what she's saying is that it's relating back to somebody. It didn't start with her. You know, why? How do we know that? Well, oftentimes it's a repeating pattern. She's seeing it showing up in different ways, or she may know that, yeah, the same thing happened to mom, grandma, like it goes back. Or she may go, I don't know. I don't know much about what happened. I don't know much about my family. Well, guess what? When we don't know much about our ancestors, oftentimes something's hidden, it was suppressed. There was probably a lot of trauma there. So when we're initially talking about the issue, we can kind of sense, you know, what passed down unresolved energies, traumas is still is affecting the current day relationship that my client's having with herself and with others. So then we'll have, this will be in like a group setting. So there could be, you know, 5 to a dozen people. It just depends. It could be more. I will ask my sister, my client, I will say, can you pick someone to represent yourself? Or you know, oftentimes in this type of setting, I'm going to say, can you pick someone to represent? If I'm sensing it's great, you know, great grandmother origin, to represent great grandmother. So we'll start where it intuitively feels that the origin of the trauma, the split, the relationship issue began. The client will pick somebody in the group to represent, and that means that the person will stand up, and the client will place her hands on the back, and as there's sort of like this is the phenomenological experience, right? There's sort of an energy exchange. That person who's representing great grandmother is also tuning into the field. This field, again, many words. It can be called the morphic field, the healing field, the knowing field, quantum field, the universe field. So if a phenomenological experience happens with the representatives, they begin to, in a sense, channel the essence, tune into the spirit, the essence of great grandmother. And what happens is, let's say great grandmother had a limp. The representative doesn't know that. Maybe they don't even know the sitter. But the representative tuning into the field, so tuning into the family system of my client, and she'll just begin limping. She'll begin tuning into a particular time period, perhaps of that great trauma. So a certain age, great grandmother might show up at age 18. Maybe that's when the trauma was. Maybe great grandmother lost a child then, and that is what is the origin of my client's issue today. Maybe great grandmother and great grandfather lost a child at age 18, and they didn't have the tools, and that happened back then more than we even can imagine. Nobody talked about trauma. Nobody probably had the word for trauma. It was suppressed. No one went to therapy. And so the pain that of a hardship, the pain of a separation, the pain of a loss was not, fully honored, fully felt, and it just got suppressed. So again, this unresolved pain, trauma gets passed down. So in the workshop, in the family constellation, we'll place the parts in. We'll place representatives in for that family system that are wanting to be seen. So what's wanting to be addressed or looked at in the constellation is what hasn't been seen, what hasn't been honored in the family, what hasn't been spoken, so what hasn't been given a voice, and what hasn't been heard. Sometimes things are spoken, but they're not heard. So, and when the representatives, again, we're giving them voice through the representatives for the family members, are able to see, or there's certain movements that happen. These are healing movements of the soul. So these movements, again, just naturally, and we always say as a facilitator, follow your movements. The representatives may turn and look a different way, may actually turn and look and face. So let's say great grandmother finally is able to turn and face great grandfather. Like she's able to actually feel the pain, process the pain, and look at great grandfather again and see great grandfather with love. And maybe she was seeing him with disdain, and now maybe the look of love comes back with her, with pain, with the honoring of the loss. But now she can be with great grandfather with the pain, and same with great grandfather. Perhaps he can do in his own processing, his own way. So the field, the healing field, as we hold this intention for this work, always moves towards wholeness, WHOLE, always moves towards completion, towards resolution. And so as facilitators, we're holding space for that. And so we also, as facilitators, may bring in, that's when we're bringing in certain representatives, certain parts. I come from I'm trained in traditional family constellation work, and I also am tuned very much directly to my own spirituality. So I have my own spiritual team, spirit team that I work with. And I often bring that into the constellation too. So we are, we're holding space for the healing of generations back and forward, so that my client can really release what is not hers. So she can release unentangle the burdens, the entanglement, so that she's free from carrying this. And then often other times what happens during a constellation is the reconnecting of the soul. So the spiritual, the knowing, the awareness, the connecting directly to the divine. And so we're doing, as facilitator, I'm kind of doing some tweaking in the background, some tuning in, but everyone's tuning into the field. And the field is what connects us all. We have this sense that we are separate, these separate humans, walking this world, and nothing else, nothing that came before really affects us. We are all interconnected. We're all interrelated. We're all connected through this unified field. And so once we tune into it through a constellation, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's online or in person, in a community setting, we're really get the visceral knowing. It's a before and after. It awakens our own memory of yes, we are connected. We are connected through this mystery, this field.
Yeah, I love the way you explained that. That was really good. Just how would you say it differs? Because there's traditional therapy and then there's constellations. And I mean, most people try the traditional therapy. How would you tell them how would it impact on their life differently?
Yeah, there's many types of beautiful, wonderful therapies, modalities out there right now, tools. Traditional therapy, I don't think traditional therapy is as traditional as it used to be. I think therapists are adding more and more tools that are more and more effective. Traditionally, therapy was okay, time out, let's look at your trauma, let's talk about it. It was very left brain and didn't really connect, integrate, have us access deeper meaning, spiritual soul messages. And I think a lot of what we are seeking here is, we do feel separate from our divinity. And I think a lot of what we are seeking is that access to get to find that reconnection, that wholeness. So I mean, oftentimes when traditional therapy doesn't work, or when there's a limit, then family constellation work can be what really takes somebody who's seeking healing, self-discovery to the next level, and can incorporate as well, therapy as well. These are constellation work, accessing the field. These are tools that, I mean, just as therapy has evolved, we are accessing greater, more powerful modalities right now. It's the time that we're in this, what feels like a very speedy, exponentially propelled awakening. And so the tools that we are accessing is matching that intensity. And I do believe that constellation work with its own evolution is also, again, evolving in that way too. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So I know that there's healing sentences that get said and healing gestures that get done. But how would a person be able to access the morphic field if they wanted to do it, say, from home? Or would they be able to do it?
Yeah, really good question. And I do have some videos on YouTube where I take people through mini constellations where they can, and I always have post-it notes. I mean, they can actually write on post-it notes representations, right? So representative. And so this is how I work with my clients through Zoom one-on-one is we'll write their name on a post-it note and place them into the field. And as they're placing their hand on the post-it note, they are channeling. So let's say there was a trauma split at age 5, and that part keeps coming up, and they feel lost and stuck at that age. And I'm kind of going a step ahead. They didn't know that's what was going on. They were just feeling lost and stuck. And so when we're in the constellation, we were able to identify that, oh, there was a trauma split at age 5, and you're kind of stuck there. That part's been kind of taken over you. So we can literally write my client will write me at age 5 and bring in that herself in that way. Just like in a group, she's going to channel, she's going to remember, like, oh, I'm seeing this is what happened, I'm feeling this way. And that's how we again hold space for the what hasn't been seen, what didn't she speak, what didn't she have words for back then when she was 5. And then we listen to her, we really be with her at that time so that we can hold space to reintegrate with her so she can come back home and feel whole, come back home to the self. So when somebody's accessing the field themselves, they can practice and they can literally write on post-it notes parts of themselves. So me at age 5, and when you feel into the representation, you're going to channel information. You're going to receive more in the unconscious, the subconscious, tuning into the field. You're going to receive messages from your spirit guides too. The field will support the information. The setting up that we're the intention of the constellation is for healing. And so your spirit team is going to support you in that way. So yeah, I do have these constellations that you can follow along. When there are many ways to access the field, I use post-it notes. Other facilitators will use representations. I don't have any crystals right near me, but sometimes in a constellation they'll use different objects to represent family members or parts of the self, or you can have a representation for love, so emotions, things. It doesn't have to be just people. And we do forms of this, but when we're intentional, it's very powerful. So for example, somebody could take a crystal and say, this crystal represents love, and they can place this crystal in front of them, and they can actually receive messages, feel the energy of, and it'll impact their life. Like, it'll have profound impact to intentionally bring in the energy, frequency, vibration of love. And so we're using representations to do that. So there are many ways that people can practice with this. There's not one way to do constellation work.
So how does it affect other family members? Because if you're accessing the morphic field, it means that you're playing with the morphic field, you're restructuring it. And how instant does it work?
Yeah, when we do healing, yeah, we're not this separate speck on this earth. We're all really interrelated. So, we like to think that what we do doesn't affect others positively or negatively. It's not the case. So any healing, the more healing work that we do in relation to the field, we can viscerally experience that we are affecting everyone and everything. I mean, we are resonators. We are transmitting and receiving all the time. We're fractals, and so we're all parts of the whole. We are a part of the whole. And so when we are doing the healing for ourselves, we'll be able to see how we are impacting our generations back. Well, how do we know? Well, all of a sudden, maybe before I had no awareness of great grandmother, but wow, now this burden that I didn't even know was there, like I didn't even realize my shoulders were heavy. Maybe I had some physical pain, but it was related to that, because after the constellation, I don't have that anymore. I'm actually sitting up stronger, and I'm hearing these support messages from great grandmother. Again, didn't know she existed before, and I actually can feel support behind me. Like, this is weird. I never knew that was possible. I feel like when I tune into it, because the facilitator maybe said to tune into, but now I can know, like, I can actually tune into the feeling, like this love being passed down generation after, and wow, I can actually feel myself receiving that. I wasn't aware. So it's sort of like a perspective shift. So there is the experience of, okay, I'm doing the work for my ancestors, for my ancestors, holding space for them to also do the work for themselves. And I feel the spreading going back. I'm feeling it. And I'm also seeing it in my children too. Like, I get that they're going through their own trauma. It's part of life, part of the human design. But I can see how my relationship with them is shifting. Again, it's something that I'm doing. They didn't do the constellation, but I can see it shifting within them. Like, that, whatever was there before is not there for them. And I can also feel that, my relationships with people at work are different. Man, that means that person who I'm relating to differently is impacting their family, their relation. So again, we can see how this work just spreads at this intimate local level. And imagine, I mean, these are all, we're creating ripples, right? We're shifting when we're tuning in our frequency, we're shifting the frequency of the planet. And so that's what we're doing right now collectively is and this awakening, this conscious awakening is shifting. We're shifting our frequency, our range of vibration. And so again, starts with the self. This is why this work's important, because how do we do that? How do we shift our frequency? How do we shift as the earth is shifting its frequency range? How do we do that? Because we have to work with the planet in order to do that. Well, family constellation work is an access point, because what I can if I can release, if I can hold space for healing in my family system, release what's not me, come back to my wholeness, stand in my strength, return the parts of myself, coming back to wholeness, coming home to the self, reconnect to my divinity, I'm able to actually access a higher frequency. And when I do that, again, I'm holding space for this whole planet and all the people on here, which are going through going through a rebirthing process right now. And it's been a very interesting, painful birthing process. But that's how I can support the planet, others, is by doing the work myself.
Yeah. I know. I actually, when I watched my very first constellation, before I even did it, it had such an impact on myself. And the reason was because we all have similar stuff that happened in our families. So as you say, it's not what happens to one happens to others as well. We've all had experience of war or famine or incest or some kind of trauma that's happened, or alcoholism or something that's happened in the family, and people can relate to that. And I had such a profound shift, and it wasn't even my family that was being worked on, but I know it's such a powerful modality. Can you share maybe a healing that you've experienced with a client that's been a huge shift?
Yes, there are so many. Let me think of one that wants to be spoken. One that comes to mind. I do a year-long program for my online clients, and this is we meet once a month. And in the beginning of the program, beginning of the year, we set our intentions, and we're tuned in to that. This is going to be a guided cadence this year, working with their spirit team, working with their ancestors. I had a client who stuck in a relationship that wasn't satisfying. She wanted to move. She was dependent on him financially, otherwise, and she wanted to, and she hadn't been working. It was a really tough place for her. She had done a lot of healing work, and quite a bit of family constellation work. So at the end of the year, and this is where this work, family constellation work, can work with a lot of trauma, and it can be ugly. Can also be very beautiful and soft and gentle, and it can be both at the same time. And so when her year-long program ended, I remember we went back through her intentions, and she had moved to a new state. She had enrolled her daughter into a school that was supporting her. She had started a new business. She was back working as a part-time a type of therapist. She had built community. She was happy. She was feeling fulfilled, and she still had moments of, this isn't working, I'm lost. But those were very, very far few in between. She was showing up in the constellation as already in her strength, as already in the reflective mode. She was facilitating herself. And so oftentimes my role as facilitator is to get my client to the point of, I'm facilitating, and that's not something you can force on them. That can be well, what would you do, or how would you like to place yourself in, or what words do you hear? And it's a slow discovery for the person. So just like in the beginning, I told you how I was kind of doing all this work. I was kind of lost as a child, doing all this work, doing all the constellation work. And then one day it was like I was becoming. facilitator, but I didn't know. And then one day it was like, holy crap, I am actually facilitating constellations. Like, I kind of hold space for my clients in a similar way of holding that whole experience for them, where they get to discover who they are. They get to have an intention of where they want to be, and then they get to enjoy this magical process in partnership with the universe, in partnership with their spirit team. This releasing of what is not them, this coming back to the self, this discovery of who they are. I remember we were wrapping up for her year long, and I think we went a little bit longer than a year. Maybe we extended that to 18 months. And I remembered it was the gentle, beautiful satisfaction of, and almost like shock from her of, I got everything I wanted, and it wasn't about, she's like, I got the stuff, like, wow, I created my business again, and art, and then community, and it was acknowledging who she had become in this. And that's also my job too, is if somebody comes to me and they say, you know, I felt, you know, I did this, and I was this during this, and I'm like, and I go, no. Do you see? Do you see who you were? Do you see who you are? Do you see what you bring? Do you see what you give to others? And that's my job, to hold a mirror, to hold a light and go, see yourself, honor yourself. And so who she had became was somebody who could really honor herself, somebody who knew her boundaries, someone who could be in relationship with this. She was still in relationship with that same partner, but know herself and stand in her strength, take care of herself, be responsible for herself. She had full option of leaving now if she wanted to. So for me, that is a how can we use the support of the field, of this constellation work, to meet somebody where she is, you know, whether that's doing the family constellation, whether that's parts work, whether that's reconnecting to your own divinity, what do I want out of life, to frankly enjoy life, to be happy.
Yeah. Like you say, it doesn't have to be this dramatic experience that it's when you look back over time and you go, wow, so look how different I am. I'm not the person that I was before. And it's gentle, like you say. It doesn't have to be, and it can be. I mean, I've never cried so much in constellations in real life as I did constellations.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing, is what's true is that for her it was so soft, slow, and gentle movements of the soul, that it wasn't dramatic, because it wasn't like, I'm going to take a giant leap here, this is me. This is a natural, it was so organic and natural for her that it was almost, she didn't even notice it. In the beginning, she was like, I don't know how this is going to be possible, but it was just such a slow unfolding. So it was so extreme. Like, it was so like, oh my God, my life is totally different than it was. But it didn't occur like that to her, because it was just a natural, gentle, supported movement of the soul.
And also, I think it wasn't hard work for her to go and find herself and set herself up. She's not fighting with herself all the time. It happened organically. And a lot of women, and there are people stuck in toxic relationships that battle to go out. And I mean, I actually did a video on telling women, and men too, not to give away your financial responsibility, because if something happens, you're stuck there. And you're never really truly stuck. You think you're stuck, but you're not. You can make a plan. And somebody commented and said, how dare you? And I
Mm.
thought, wow, her mind is so stuck in where she's at that she can't see a way out. And I'm not
Mm.
judging anybody. I've been there. But I think it's difficult for people to see that there is another way. There's another way that
Mm.
can be going with your guidance. And as you say, when you're releasing all that trauma, things just happen. And things line up to just magically make things happen that you say, how on earth, how did that come
Yeah,
to me? It's
yeah.
magic.
You know what I love that because my client, she did have quite a bit of resistance throughout, and she worked through it. It was, she had a lot of younger parts that were wanting. It's all coming back to me. I had a lot of parts that were initially getting in her way, and what we did was those were the parts that were the gold for her. Those were the creative parts, the artistic parts that it was like, okay, come back, help us, help us on this journey. And once she really started embracing those parts, instead of those parts getting in her way, saying, no, I don't, we're not doing this, those are the parts that were like, let's create this art, let's start this gathering with the community, let's and so the integrating of all of that, we so much we talk about in the family constellations, those who were excluded. We so often want to exclude parts of ourselves, and when the part that gets in our way, that procrastinates, and when we do, we only further separate ourselves. So it's about building those relationships with those parts. What's going on with those parts? What happens? Seeing, hearing, listening. And then when we do, there's a shift. It's all about a perspective shift. We start to see those parts differently. Those parts have these sides of them, these aspects that are beautiful, that are gifts, that are unique. So what are those, and what are those gifts? And so when we identify, when we go, oh my god, that part is the feistiness. Oh, I need her. I need that creative feistiness back. That voice. Come back. I need your voice. I want your voice. And so when we embrace our parts that way, and our parts feel embraced, that's when we have the sense of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how disjointed I felt, because now I feel so whole. I feel, and like maybe I find myself actually like hugging myself, because that's how I feel. Like I love myself. I give comfort to myself, because that's what I enjoy. That's what my 5-year-old self loves, is this. So it's also like a sense of the term reparenting. We're doing that. We're doing that as well. We're giving ourselves what we want, really.
Yeah. So you said the world's experiencing overwhelming challenges right now. So, and the old ways of coping, they're not working anymore. What do you think is shifting globally that's actually calling more people to turn into the spiritual modalities?
Yeah. Hmm. It's funny. There's many layers and levels to talk about this. Um, I would say that, and I briefly talked about it earlier. The Earth is going through a rebirth, a vibrational shift. So the Earth is in a vibrational range, and it's increasing, it's shifting its range. And so we as humans must also go through that birth, that shift, and increasing, shifting our vibrational range or frequency. And so, we can look at it at that, through those eyes, that perspective. How are we actually experiencing it? This is an awakening, a conscious awakening. I tune into that, and I hear this from others, that we can remember, we identify that we chose this particular time. Some of us are, and some of us feel like we have a mission here. Some of us are aware, some of us are sensing it. And that, for me, that I'll speak for myself, that feels like I mean, obviously the work that I do, so in support of humans and this conscious awakening, how that looks is different for everyone. And so we are experiencing being rebirthed. In the rebirthing process, it can be painful. We are, it's like a death and a rebirth. And so many of us are experiencing a lot of pain, and it can feel like an ego death. What I thought was one way before, is not the way that life is occurring for me now. And so these rebirths, some of the people are experiencing it over and over again, and again, the painful cycle over and over again. Ultimately, again, to shift our frequency. Yeah, I guess that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Megan, I would love for our listeners to actually have an experience of the Morphic Field. Would you be able to guide us through a short experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, we can let's have people. It'd be wonderful to actually do have my camera set up so that we can flip and yeah, I mean, we can have people tune into the field right now, and so and just everyone can take a moment to drop in and feeling themselves centered and begin to notice what's around you. Begin to feel how there is this interconnectedness beyond your normal five senses. So tuning into the unseen, this field, this healing field, you feel like a information, space, energy, this field that connects us all. And in this field, see if you can feel into your spirit team, your guides, your higher self, those benevolent forces who are here to support you. See if you can open yourself up for your greatest good, to receive information, as you are an antenna, a resonator, receiving and transmitting energy and information always. See if you can take a moment to receive some information from your spirit team right now. I'm actually feeling yourself tuning into directly. So perhaps your direct line to your spirit team was fuzzy before, foggy. Maybe you just didn't feel connected. So restoring your connection directly to your spirit team to this guidance from here on out. And perhaps the words to say out loud are, I receive guidance, information, and support from the universe. Let's add or change those words a little bit. Let's say I receive gentle and clear guidance, information, and support from the universe. Feel that feels to you. So again, as resonators, as antenna, receiving, transmitting energy and information, connected the field. And when we transmit that information, that sentence, we're asking for clear and gentle support, guidance, and information from the universe. So see if there's any other information, guidance, your spirit team wants you to know right now. You can receive that in many different ways. Okay. So we can continue always to just take a moment to tune in. Sometimes, and I'd like to, and I do a free 15-minute call with people that are interested in this work. And first thing I do is I'm able to see, how tuned in, how's that line to their spirit team, to that information, their higher self, to their divinity, how connected are they? And so we do a little bit of tuning at first. And especially when I have a session with a client, because I'm facilitator, but if I receive the information, that's one thing. But the important thing is that they're receiving the information. So I'm asking them the questions. What's great grandmother saying right now? How does she feel? So again, tuning them into the field. And that's part of this conscious awakening. That's another way of doing it. It's another way of progressing our spiritual awakening is by connecting consciously to the field. What was your experience, Natasha?
As soon as you changed the words and you said, let's make it more gentle, I could just feel this like warm, fuzzy feeling. And it literally shifted. It was so interesting. I didn't realize I'd already connected so well. But okay. Yeah, that was great.
And the words that we speak, and I don't think we really talk too much about this, the healing sentences that we speak during constellation are instructions, can imprison us and can free us. And so, there are sentences from the past, and that can be from our family or the beliefs of our family, can be from the collective societal, can be sentences of this day and age. We are living those sentences. Maybe somebody literally said a sentence to us as a child, and we're living that sentence out. So in the field, and especially, just as you experience, we're releasing old sentences, old coding, anything that's not serving us anymore. And then in that space, there's a clear space so that we could speak new sentences, give new instructions, transmitting to ourselves and to the universe. This is the new sentence. This is the new coding. Okay. Yeah. And so when we're really clear, and again, I help people get clear on how to do that. And then you do it yourself. You get really clear on, wow, oh my gosh, what I just said, I feel that. And you become aware of the words that you speak and how it's impacting everything and everyone. So you have more power with your words, where words create.
Yeah. Words have got so much power, and people don't realize that they're actually speaking certain things into existence. Most of the time, things they don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're aware of that, you can really change your world. And I think they say in the beginning was the word. And everything stems from that. Yeah. So, Megan, where can people get hold of you?
Yes, my website, themorphicfield.com. And again, I do have the YouTube account as well, channel. But the morphicfield.com, and I do encourage people, if this work resonates with them, family constellation work, I do have a free 15-minute call right now that they could sign up through the website. And again, we'll talk about their issue and be able to see where the origins most likely originated in their family system, whether it's a split part of the self. Tune them into the field so that they can really receive a lot of guidance directly. So I do, really my intention as well is to give them whether or not they decide to do a full 90-minute constellation, is to really do that little tweaking, tuning in so that they can begin to really get some deep healing through the field for themselves. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'll post all those links below, and then maybe you could just send me the link to the YouTube channel, and I'll add that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Do you have a final message for our viewers before we go?
Yeah. Meet yourself where you are. Um, there's no place to really get to. This is all a journey. And I know maybe that's trite to say, and some people listening, but I gotta tell you, my spirit team constantly reminds me of that. I'm the type of person. I'm like, okay, what's next? What's coming? Tell me. I want to prepare. I want to, and over again, it's like, Megan, you know, you're perfect where you are. Enjoy. And then I'm reminded, oh, this is the whole point. This is the awakening. This is the rebirth. And so enjoying this process. And there's no place to get to. So slowing down, always integrating, coming from the heart, balancing, and you know, connecting to the field, just taking a moment to connect to the field, which for me, I find infinite support. Um, I find infinite love, wisdom, um, and that's connecting to the field, and that's again integrating with myself too. So the field is not separate from me. The field is within. The field is. We don't even have words. It just is. We just are. I am. Um, and really just enjoying life in this way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think people forget life gets hectic, and we forget to just take a moment and connect with ourselves, with nature, just be. And as soon as you know what I find, as soon as you become aware, you relax.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you
Yes.
step out of that busyness of what's going on in your mind and what's going on around you, you just kind of feel like expansive and relaxed. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so
And I
much.
think, yeah, we're doing that. We're going out of the left brain into the right brain. We're doing the integration, the balancing, and yeah, just that moment of awareness can um
Yeah.
can really give such peace. Yes, thank you so much, Natasha. I really appreciate you having me on today.
No, thank you.